Now we begin this hour with an open and honest conversation on mental health with some of the biggest names in professional sports. We've recently reported on two elite women athletes, Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka, who are stepping away from their sports over their mental health concerns. Nearly 20% of American adults are facing mental health challenges. This morning, you'll hear from three athletes. NBA superstar Kevin Love, who has spoken openly about his anxiety and depression. Also, six-time NFL Pro Bowler Brandon Marshall. Back in 2011, he shared that he was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. And WNBA rookie DiDi Richards, who is part of a new generation of athletes speaking up about injuries that go beyond the physical. Richards was temporarily paralyzed during a college practice in 2020, and she says she's still dealing with it emotionally. That is trauma that is sitting in. I sat down with all three, who want everyone to know that it's okay. It is okay to be vulnerable. When did you feel like being vulnerable was okay?
So I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. The best way to describe borderline personality disorder is emotional disorder. Most people who are living with borderline personality disorder, they don't have the skills and tools naturally to be able to cope and manage, self-regulate. For me, I had to go through self-assessment to pick up those tools and skills to be able to communicate what I was feeling. I didn't have that naturally. It was just all about reacting, not responding.
Now, Kevin, you've said that there was times where you wondered why you were so concerned what other people thought. When did that shift happen?
Shift happened probably in 2017. I had to have a major moment in my life, a very public, emotional, and mental health moment, which was a panic attack on the floor.
You ran and you collapsed on the trainer's floor.
Yep.
And from there, you tried to gather yourself. You said you thought you were about to die.
I thought I was having a cardiac moment, honestly. I mean, the oxygen just wasn't going to my brain, my lungs. I just wasn't getting, nothing was alleviating the panic that I was feeling. So I actually ended up on oxygen after that, went to the Cleveland Clinic, all the tests checked out. So to me, I'm thinking, well, what the hell just happened? I was taught to compartmentalize. I was taught to not speak about it, not show weakness. I think as athletes, we can all confide in that and understand that in a way. Yeah, and it's funny because every few years I kind of see myself, I look in the mirror. I wasn't passing the mirror test. Now I'm doing a little bit better, more comfortable in my own skin. And I can say, hey, listen, if I'm feeling triggers, if I'm feeling something, I know my tools and what I can go to.
You just said something interesting, and what you said was, I did all this work and I wasn't passing the mirror test. Then now sometimes I do, because when you think about this entire thing, right, as athletes, we get up every single day. And what do? We try to fight as hard as possible to train our bodies, to jump higher, to run faster, to be stronger. So every day, if we're going to put that much work into our bodies, right, physically, what are we doing mentally, right?
There's spiritual warfare, there's mental anxiety, and then there's physical trauma. DiDi, you had an injury that was life-changing. Paralyzation.
Right.
You're sitting in the hospital. Forget about basketball.
Right.
You're most likely thinking to yourself, am I ever gonna walk again? What was going through your head when that happened?
It happens so fast, like you said, in the blink of an eye, something you love and that you do every day was the reason why you're sitting in this hospital. So it took a toll on me mentally to where as soon as I got hurt, that's all I could think about was basketball. So it took some time. When I say some time, I'm still going through it, and I'll sit there and I'm just like, DiDi, you're still hurting from this. Or DiDi, you never allowed yourself to really cope with what you went through. As athletes, they think we're robots. You get hurt, okay, they're just hurt, they'll be back. And I started thinking like that, like, okay, I got hurt, yes, but I'm coming back. Instead of thinking, I'm hurt, I need to figure out how I'm going to deal with this and how I am feeling deep down inside. Because as a Black female, you're taught to swallow that shit, you know what I'm saying? You just swallow it and you figure it out on your own. And it wasn't until recently, when I say recently, like a couple months ago, where my college coach was like, DiDi, you're not the same. Like you're not okay. Because I'm this happy person. I've always been this happy person. But it was to the point where I took my craft so seriously that I was just forget what you're thinking in your head. Forget the world feeling sorry for you. That doesn't mean anything. It's now you have to go and work harder. You missed 38 days being paralyzed. Now it's time to go back in the gym and, train harder.
You said something that struck me. You said, as a black woman, which is as real as it gets. When you said that came from somewhere deep. What do you mean by that?
You go through things, and it gets to a point where we're sitting here and we could be hurting right in front of you, But if you ask us what's wrong, it's gonna be nothing. How are you? But it's just something that you've been raised, you've been brought up as, and it's, especially as an athlete at that, it's so many things adding on to a female, a black female, an athlete. It's like now you're pushed way down into you're at the bottom. Now you're the last person you're thinking about, even if it comes to yourself.
So I want to speak on isolation. Now with the pandemic and people finding themselves alone, do you think that exacerbated the struggles? And have you guys been in situations where you were alone and maybe your depression or anxiety got the best of you?
Sports is a microcosm of society.
No doubt.
Right?
100%.
So think about 2020, the pandemic. For the very first time, we all were dealing with the same thing and having these conversations. Anxiety, depression, there were so many people dealing with that for the very first time, had no clue what that was or what they were feeling.
They couldn't move on to work, they couldn't leave their house, they had to deal.
I think that's the huge takeaway is connect with the trauma. So I never dealt with anxiety, ever. I had my first panic attack in a pandemic.
Wow.
Really?
Yes.
What happened?
So December, got COVID-19, and I'm sitting in my bedroom, isolation, and I just remember this thing coming over me where I couldn't breathe. And all I could think about is oh my goodness, if this continues to happen, then I'm gonna have to go to the hospital, and then they put me on a ventilator, and then what happens if I'm under now? I can't control it.
No doubt.
And all I could think about is I just want my wife to come in here. I was like, if she can just come in here, let me just hold onto her leg. I just need someone to touch me. I just need someone, to be here with me.
Physical touch.
But no one could come in that room.
Yeah.
I remember just you know what? Let me use my skills and tools that I learned. I was like, I know it's going to be okay. This is not a heart attack. I feel like I'm dying, but I'm not going to die, right? And just understanding what it was it allowed me to be able to get through that moment, right?
There's some that will sit back and say, first world problems. I mean, you got the money. You get paid to deal with the BS.
Right.
How bad is life really?
Right.
But something that you guys have all said at one point or the other, it's success is not immune to depression.
That's right.
So mental health issues,
Right.
not bias
Doesn't discriminate.
to who has money or who doesn't,
Yeah.
if you're an athlete or not.
Right.
So just speak on that perspective, because you guys deal with certain things, and not only are you dealing with it, but you're dealing with it in the public eye,
Right.
which almost magnifies it and intensifies it.
Right. We have to understand that social anxiety is a real thing. Naomi Osaka, she's dealing with a real thing.
Right.
So is the sport bigger than her life?
For well-being.
Her life. How many more athletes, entertainers, or just people, are going to continue to be isolated, right, because of their truth or what they're dealing with? There are people out there that are struggling in silence. So we have to embrace this.
Right.
We're just not used to having those conversations. Yeah. So when Naomi opens up, she's bringing more people to the sport because we're humanizing her.
And they identify with her.
There you go.
I want to say thank you to the athletes for being transparent. And for those watching, I would encourage you to resist the urge to see them as athletes. Just see them as somebody that could be going through the same thing you or a loved one is going through. Because athletes, we just parallel what's going on in society. And like I said, 20% of Americans deal with some type of mental health issue on a daily basis.
I'm so glad that they spoke up the way they did. DiDi Richards, I went to see the Liberty last month. She was so good. I had no idea about her backstory. Brandon and Kevin, we have heard their stories too, but the fact that they opened up the way they did and spoke so candidly, it'll help. All this does, Nate, is help other people.
It definitely helps other people. And when DiDi said they see us as robots, that goes for a lot of people working a lot of jobs.
There you go.
And I think that message should be more broadly accepted, not only among athletes, but for all workers.
And speaking of that, if you or someone you know is seeking mental health resources, you can call the National Alliance on Mental Illness helpline at 1-800-950-6264. or in a crisis text NAMI to 741-741.